So you were in charge of the ministry at a time when a lot of things happened, a lot of policy decisions have been taken. But do you think this was probably the most tumultuous time for the sector and for the government? And how do you see the sector now going forward, sir?
I think it was a tumultuous time. There were several events which led to uncertainty with regard to various things. For example, on licenses, on spectrum, on the spread of broadband, on the policy. So there were several dimensions on which there was perhaps both an expectation and some amount of uncertainty. But I think over the period of the last 2 years, these issues have been dealt with, and by and large, I think most of these uncertainties have been addressed. The direction is quite clear, and perhaps now the industry and the sector know what lies ahead.
Well, sir, it's been 2.5 years since the 2G scam, but there are a lot of skeptics who still feel that uncertainty for Indian telecom has still not ended, and it could be some time away before actual clarity emerges. And what do you think is really the big decision or big developments that are really key to the clarity for the sector going forward?
Well, I think when you are dealing with issues of this magnitude, they don't get addressed overnight, and there is a certain sequence which has to be adopted, and there's a certain process for the approval. So this does take a certain amount of time and follows its own logic in terms of decision making. So this is also somewhat complicated by the fact that many of these are also subject to legal proceedings as well, and therefore there has to be some correlation between the sort of sequence in which the decisions get taken, the timing in which the decisions get taken, and the proceedings in different forums. So I would certainly think that there are, of course, a few small details which still need to be spelt out. But by and large, on all the major issues, for example, the policy framework is now well established. The government has announced the National Telecom Policy in 2012. The way forward on the licensing in terms of a unified license has been made clear, and the specifics are also in the public domain. What remains to be done is only the actual fine print of the license, the nuts and bolts. Similarly, as far as spectrum, the way forward is clear. Auctions have been held. It's true that the price has been established in some circles, but not in all of them. So there is a certain amount of
work that needs
gap
to be done.
Which exists, but there is no doubt or ambiguity about the direction or how those gaps will get addressed.
So you mentioned courts. Do you think the sector could have probably revived quicker after the scam and the aftermath if the court intervention had not been so active, and if there was not so much of intervention of the courts in all policy decisions?
Well, I don't think I can really comment on it in that sense, because when courts look at it, perhaps it is looked at more from the point of view of the law and the rights of individuals. Whereas the perspective, when you look at it from the point of view of governance or from the point of view of policy making, is not a rights-based approach or a legally or a law-based approach. It is more with regard to public good and public welfare, which itself consists of several different dimensions. So I think the fact is that the sector and the issues in the sector being looked at from these two wholly distinct perspectives simultaneously did add in some ways to the complexity, but each was perhaps essential in its own right.
And do you think the sector is probably in a bigger mess now than what it was ever before? As you rightly pointed out, there are two complex issues that need to be dealt with. You have the legal aspects that the courts are dealing with, and government that is dealing with a whole host of other issues, from public goods to consumer, and of course exchequer being one of the important elements as well.
Yeah. No, I certainly don't think that the issues are more complex now. As I said, from the perspective that I have, at least 70 to 80% of the issues on which there was uncertainty, I am talking about now the main issues,
Right.
in terms of policy, licensing, spectrum and so on. Those have been addressed. The remaining 20 to 30%, which is still a work in progress, is mostly with regard to the nuts and bolts and the details. There is no doubt or ambiguity about the direction. Now, there is of course always a certain amount of litigation. That is not unusual or uncommon in this sector, and I don't think we should expect that that will not happen at all. So the existence of litigation is a completely separate issue, which should not be taken to mean an indication of uncertainty, because in the nature of the sector and the nature of the operations, there will always be sometimes issues on which there are different perceptions,
There's no
and
conversion.
these will all have to be dealt with in accordance with the law. Those kind of uncertainties are completely different from any uncertainty with regard to a policy or a licensing framework or how spectrum is going to be allocated and managed, which are far more deep-seated issues. So the point is that all those basic issues have been pretty much dealt with, and there's only, as I said, some amount of detailing which has to be done. So I would certainly think that there is a far greater degree of clarity and certainty. It's true that the kind of certainty which has emerged may not be precisely the kind of certainty which some of the stakeholders would have wanted. That's a different matter. If the question is, have they got exactly what they wanted or what they needed?
Yes.
Maybe not. But then
think
it's not possible in a situation where you have a multiplicity of stakeholders, be they, you know, the licensees themselves, or the government, the subscribers, you know, forums of law or civil society organizations, or even in a sense the media, which has its perspective on various issues.